Howdy folks, we're back and we're continuing in 5.2 for elementary statistics. So now that we have a sense of when we have a binomial probability distribution, we have some of the key notation and key values that we're going to be needing to find probabilities. We can now look at those methods. So there's two methods we're going to be looking at. Even though there's three listed here, we're only looking at two. So we're going to be using the binomial probability formula. We're not going to be using technology, so unfortunately. And then we're also going to use a table in the back of the textbook, so we'll take a look at that as well. Now the first thing is the formula. The formula is intense. Now there's two forms for using the formula. I'm going to advocate that we use the second one because it avoids a lot of the unnecessary tedious calculations that we're going to see up in here. So you got these expressions that have an exclamation point in there, so you have to know what an exclamation point does in math. And if you're not sure, I can show you, but it's going to be a lot simpler if you learn how to use the button on your calculator. So I'm going to show you on a couple of different calculators how you can do that. Now, some of the variables that we talked about last time were the value n, which is the number of trials. We got x, which is a specific number of successes among the n trials. We got p is equal to the probability of success in any one trial, and then q is the probability of failure. And remember, q is always found by taking 1 minus p. So, all right, so let's see it in action. Now, from that previous problem, we did have some values that we found. So we knew that n was equal to 5. We had x was equal to 3. P was 0.75. And q was 0.25. So again, we can see p and q have to add up to 1. So if we want to put these values into the formula, so let me scoot back down a little bit. This is the formula we're going to want to use. So now x is 3. So we're going to want the probability of 3, exactly 3, is equal to our 5, our NCR, and again, just those brackets, all it's for is just to indicate it's a button on your calculator, nothing more. Don't overanalyze it. And then you got x is 3. So that's the first part that we're going to see in the calculator. The next part is this exponential. So we got p to the x power. So again, p is 0.75. And that's raised to the third. So those are always going to match, those two values. And then the last piece is going to be your q. So 0.25. And now it's raised to, it's hard to see, but it's n minus x. So n minus x. So 5 minus 3, which is 2. Now, the one thing you can always assume or always check is that your two exponents that you have here, once you're done, those two exponents should always add up to n. They should always add up to, in this case, 5. So we can see that they do, so we're good. So we've correctly inputted all the information into the formula. Now let's put it into the calculator. So remember, depending on which type you have, like I said, I'll show you with this one, and I'll show you with the graphing one. And then there's others that are kind of in between. So if you have one that's in between, like I said, I'll give you the best advice I can without seeing it. All right, so for this first part, we have 5 NCR3. So now the NCR button is right above the 8. So we're going to have to hit the second button to activate it. So the first thing you do is just hit 5. Then we're going to have to hit second 8. Then we hit 3, and then always hit equals at the end. So that calculation is 10. So that piece is done. The next piece, now you're going to have to be able to put in exponents that are, could be fairly large. So let's clear that. So we're going to put 0.75, and now to put those higher exponents in, we want to use this button, y to the x button. So I'm going to hit that. And then I'll hit the 3, and then again, I got to hit equals to calculate it. So I get a pretty long decimal from there. I'm going to write the whole thing in. And then the last piece, again, it's hard to see, but it's 0.25 to the second. So 0.25 raised to the second power. Now I could have used the x squared button because it's only an exponent of 2, but again, try to get into the habit of using that yx button. And it might be reverse lettering on your calculator, but it should be in there. So that equals 0.06, I can move this now, 25. Okay, so now the last step is just to multiply all three of those numbers together and we're done. So let's do that. I'll slide it up a little bit more. So we got 10 times 0.421875 times 0.0625 equals, so 0.26367 dot dot dot. All right, so there's our answer. Now we need to round it properly. So how many places have we been rounding probabilities? Yep, we got to round it to 3. So 264, 0.264. And then we're done. All right. Now, once you get the hang of this, you don't really need to be this deliberate with all of those steps. Your calculator is very smart, but you got to make sure you just put it in correctly. We could do this entire thing in one swoop on your calculator. So let me show you how it would work. So you got your 5 NCR 3 equals times, and then do the next piece, 0.75 raised to the third equals times the last piece, 0.25 raised to the second equals. So I didn't have to write down any of that work in between because I get the same answer. But like I said, before you jump to doing it all on your calculator, try to do it in phases just to make sure you got it down. And once you have it down, you should be fine. So with a graphing calculator, if you want to do the NCR button on that, it's going to be under the math. So if you hit the math button, now you're going to have to use the side arrow and go over to the PRB. So PRB, and then you can see if you go down a couple, there's the NCR. So let's clear it out again. And so we have 5, and then we got our math, and down to NCR, hit enter, and then 3, and then times, and then you can keep just putting everything in. So 0.75. Now, if you want to do higher exponents, you're going to have to use this little caret button. So it's like a little upward arrowhead type of thing. So you hit that, and then you can hit the 3. Now you want to get out of the exponent area, so you got to hit the side arrow, and then it brings it back down. So then you want to do times, and then 0.25 raised to the second power, and that should be it. So if we hit enter, you can see you get the same result. So graphing calculators are nice because you can see the entire thing as you're putting it in there. So either one is going to be acceptable as far as getting these calculations. So let me shut that one off. And so now let's do it again. Let's try it for another problem. So we got n is equal to 20, x is equal to 4, p is equal to 0.15. So now the one thing we really need before we can get rolling is what? What are we missing? Yeah, we're missing q. You got to have q. Always have your p's and q's. So in this case, let's do our 1 minus 0.15. So it should be 0.85. All right, so now we've got all of our variables identified. So let's plug everything in. So we got p of x, which in this case is 4. We got our 20s first, and our NCR button, and then 4 times our p raised to the 4, so remember those always match, times our 0.85, and what's the exponent going to be for that one? So remember, the two exponents are going to have to add up to n. So if you got 4 for this one, that forces this one to have to be 16. So again, n minus x, 20 minus 4. All right, so now we have everything in there. So let's see what we get. So we got 20 NCR4 equals that times 0.15 raised to the 4th equals times 0.85 raised to the 16th equals. So that should be our answer. So 0.18212 rounded to 3 significant digits, or 3 places in this case, and that should be our answer. 0.182. All right. So we have a little bit of a sense of how this works. You have a couple of options. Now, if you have a calculator that's in between that doesn't have an NCR button visible, it's going to be sort of like your graphing calculator. You're going to see a PRB button or a prob button on your calculator. If you hit that and look around with your arrows, you should be able to see that NCR button on there. So that's going to be the one that's in between. So, but if you have questions about it, feel free to email me and let me know. So now for the next part of this, we are going to be looking at some other specific cases, but we're going to do that in the next video. You guessed it. See you soon.